go again?
Oh, no, not again.
You've seen it before, haven't you?
Dom, how long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the bridge. Dear friends.
Again and again and again until we're both dead.
Hello, welcome to You've Seen It Before, Movie Reviews Connections in Mind. Dune Part 2 is the second half of Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of the Frank Herbert novel Dune. It is featuring an all-star cast including Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, so many others. And in this half of the story focuses on the aftermath of the Harkonnen recapture of Arrakis from the Atreides family. Paul Atreides and his mother are on the run and have connected with the Fremen people, and young Paul Atreides must figure out a way to lead a resistance against the Harkonnens to recapture Arrakis while also retaining his humanity. Now, this review will contain spoilers of Dune Part 2 as well as certain other films, but I'll be doing my spoiler-free thoughts first and foremost, just so you know, there will be some spoilers later on this review, but first things first, let's get into some spoiler-free thoughts on Dune Part 2. Is it a worthy adaptation of the Dune book? Is it a good movie overall? It's a good theater experience. I would say yes, it is a great theater experience, and it is still in this post-COVID reopening world. It's still great to see a movie with a pretty packed theater. I mean, my theater even has the old school seats, not even like the reclining seats. That we're relatively packed together, and my theater was pretty full. So that's a fun thing to see, and it's nice to see this kind of theater of this movie in a crowd. My one regret is I didn't see it in IMAX. So if you want to see this, if you have access to a IMAX screen, I definitely recommend seeing it in the biggest screen possible, and really with the best sound system, because where this movie really shines is in its visuals and in its sound mixing, use of its music to punctuate important moments. This movie knows when to leave a silent moment just to have a quiet conversation with just the wind blowing the sand as the only backdrop, and that is a sign of a great director and who knows how to make these things possible. And really, just the visuals themselves are stunning, and there's some great. And really, the visuals are best represented not just in the showing desert terrain, which obviously that looks great, but if you go back and there's some weird visuals described in the book of Dune. That how do you adapt that into a visual medium like that? And this movie does a really good job of those kinds of visuals as well. So many great things, to talk about this. All the actors are doing, their best, and their best is more than enough for this because, man, a lot of this story is, this is the back half of the book, so there's a lot of things that it needs to communicate, a lot of, emotional things going on here between Timothée Chalamet's Paul Atreides and Zendaya's Chani. Paul's mother, played Rebecca Ferguson. There's a lot going on there. You bring in new characters as well. Christopher Walken stars as the Emperor in this, and his daughter, Princess Rulin, I believe, Florence Pugh. And she doesn't get a ton. These characters who are introduced and they get some scenes, but you can tell, if you know the stories, they're going to get a lot more to do in the stories to come. And this is a movie that is just begging for a third movie, which who knows if, I believe Dune Messiah, I believe is the second book, and who knows if that's going to get split into two parts, but there's no way this movie does not get a sequel to this, and I'm very excited to learn more about these new characters going on, the new relationships that come about by movie's end, and that is the sign of a great movie. Plus, this is something that I think is a welcome change from the book, and also the if you're a fan of the 1984 Dune movie. This is actually surprisingly funny. There's some good humorous moments injected into this movie, particularly during Paul's training to be a Fremen. Be one of the people. There's some great moments in there, and it's just fun to see be in a theater with these laughing moments, because it's important that we laugh at some of these things, because we know things are going to take a turn towards the end of the movie, and that is again a sign of a good writing and knowing what to change in an adaptation. Now, that being said, this is as an adaptation of the original book. If you're a huge fan of the original book, there are some changes that were made from the book to this movie, particularly with a couple of characters in this movie. There's also some time compression, I believe, in the original book. Supposedly, once Paul is with the Fremen and starts leading this resistance, there's it's like 2 or 3 years that in the book that these things are going on, whereas in the movie it's taking over the place of a couple months, it seems. So there's some time compression there compared to the book, but there is one particular change, and I'm not going to spoil anything at this point, but there is one change that, while it's an understandable choice that they made this change from the book, it does complicate things, I think, and I'm not sure how they're going to play this out in the movies to come. Like I said, I'm excited to see how they're going to do that, but when you're adapting a novel and you start to go further and further from the source material, those who were beholden to the original books are going to you're going to start turning them off, I think, or at least run the risk of that. I know when Dune Part 1 came out, I believe 2021, that I made it a point to read the original the book, Dune the book, because I knew nothing about Dune, and I'm really glad I did, because going into this movie, it's important, nice to have that context to know who these characters are, but also it is sad to see what is missing from that. Go back and rewatch my Dune Part 1 review on see what I thought of that. But I think in this thing, there's less of that, but there is still stuff there that is missing, and I feel like that is going to be an issue going forward, I think. But like I said, I only read the book like a couple months before the first Dune movie, so that I was not, I didn't grow up with these books. I'm not, a huge Dune head. I don't know what Dune fans call themselves, but that is going to be an issue, I think, going forward. Also, similarly to in my review of Dune Part 1, I think I mentioned this, but also in this movie as well, this is over 2 hours. I think this is like 2.5 hours. I'm getting close to, more than that probably, going close to 3, I don't remember exactly, but while I wasn't bored during any of it, it did feel its length in a certain moment, especially in what it chooses to skip over. There, you got essentially a training montage. You could draw, not quite a montage per se, but there are training sequences of Paul learning the ways of the Fremen, and this is really interesting. And then they kind of fast forward that, and then we get more shots of Zendaya looking like she's in a perfume ad, which is fine, but I would have wanted to linger on some things rather than other things. But then again, that's just a personal preference. Also, it feels like there's some character changes that some characters turn on a dime more that quick, maybe not a dime, but we don't feel the time pass where certain characters, one in particular, I think she's a friend of Chani, and she's initially skeptical of Paul. You know, oh, he's a foreigner. He doesn't know our ways. And then seemingly like 2 scenes later, I mean, movie time wise, I think it was probably like within 10 minutes. Then she goes from that to, hey, let's embrace him. He's learning our ways. He's pretty brave. He's awesome. It's like, well, okay, I buy that she could make that change, but we as the audience weren't there to experience that change. So to me, that feels a little jarring. And there are other moments like that, I feel. And, you know, if we combine Dune 1 and Dune Part 1 and Part 2, you're looking at 5 hours-ish of footage to adapt this one book. I think it's an interesting thing. You know, with adaptations, you can't possibly put everything in there, but it is interesting to see what they put in, what they leave out, and what they're elongating, what they're compressing. And that's adapting books to movies, that's going to be a conversation all the time for that. But like I said, when I say, you know, this, when you see like social media things saying like, oh, Dune Part 2 is the greatest movie ever made or whatever, it's so amazing. It's like, yes, it's good, but I wouldn't call it the greatest ever made kind of thing. I think that's a little bit hyperbolic, but it is really darn good. I think it's a testament that, you know, me, you know, saying that it's not perfect, that I have some nitpicks. They are really just nitpicks, in my opinion. I'm sure if there were, you know, people who really liked certain things from the book that weren't included in this movie, then they'll have more complaints to have, and those probably more, you know, fair criticisms. But for me, this was a pretty darn good movie and a great theater experience. And we need more movies like this in theaters. So if I was going to give Dune Part 2 a letter grade, I would say this is a solid A. I mean, my nitpicks, I wouldn't, you know, my nitpicks are enough that I can't give it quite an A+, but again, solid A. This is probably going to be one of the best movies of the year. I mean, we're just barely, not even a third of the way through it at this point. So I have hope for movies to come on this. So those are my spoiler-free thoughts on Dune Part 2. Now let's get into some spoiler talk at certain plot developments and character arcs that may seem familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. Now, this one's kind of tricky for me because I have a couple of examples of things where I've seen before, but it's important to note that a lot of things that you can point to and say, oh, yes, you've seen them before. You know, this is an adaptation of a book that I believe came out in 1964, so that book inspired a whole ton of stories, movies, TV, whatever, that came after it. So I could point to things like, you know, the original Stargate movie, where, you know, you've got, you know, Outlanders, you know, people from off-world coming to a desert planet and inspiring the native population to rise up against its oppressors. Or, you know, The Matrix. You know, you got, you know, Paul, the whole Dune Part 2 is, you know, debating, is he actually the one? The Lisan al-Gaib, I believe is what it is, and you know, all that, you know, Matrix, you know, is he the one? You go, you know, it's almost like Matrix Reloaded in a sense, where you got half the population of Zion saying, no, he is the one, and then you got the other half like, no, it's just, you know, we don't believe that, you know, in the prophecies and all that. But then even more than that, you know, this idea of the idea of the Lisan al-Gaib being planted by this other power, the Bene Gesserits, similar to how the architect, when he built the Matrix, you know, this prophecy of the one, you know, you're the first one to come about. There have been, I think, seven other ones that have come before. This is the 8th iteration of the Matrix that we've come across. So, again, these are things that yes, those movies came out prior to Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, but then this book, you know, that's why I say there is nothing new under the sun. You know, the web of inspiration is going round and round on this. It's that cycle. So there's that, and you know, my other nitpick, like I said, I didn't want to reveal this in the spoiler-free section, but again, but in the spoiler section, I will say I am a little bit disappointed that they couldn't give us Alia Atreides as the weird 4-year-old who has the adult's mind trapped in the 4-year-old body, and when near the end, when Paul's mom, she says, she confronts the Reverend Mother of her order that digester, and she says abomination. You can kind of see that in the context of the movie, but in the book, it's specifically referring to Alia when she says that. So that's a weird thing, and I suspect the Dune book nerds are going to pick up on that moment specifically and be like, well, what's going on? They cleverly worked in that Rebecca Ferguson is, she's, speaking through Rebecca Ferguson's, mouth, doing that. They kind of worked their way around it, but like I said, with this day and age, in the '84 movie, that was kind of a weird thing that they were trying to adapt and didn't work quite as well. You can make it work a little bit better in this movie than with today's technology, I think. So I think that's a little bit of a disappointment, but that I feel like is, again, these are nitpicks. This is a very impressive movie, and I'm very glad I saw it. But what did you think of Dune Part 2? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Do you agree, disagree? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, I will, also let me know in the comments if you haven't seen Dune Part 1 and were able to follow Dune Part 2 just fine, because Denis Villeneuve said in an interview that Dune Part 1 was not required viewing to see Dune Part 2, which I respectfully disagree. I'm very glad I rewatched the first parts a few days before seeing Part 2, because I would not have remembered a lot of what had gone on in the first part before going into this one. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below, and thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get, and if you like this video or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, share, and especially subscribe. I would very much appreciate it. Be sure to look for my next movie review, which its schedule holds, should be for Kung Fu Panda 4, which comes out this week. And yeah, I hope to see you there. And then, like I said, thank you so much for watching. But just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.